Hey, thanks for checking into the Corral. Today we're going to talk about a comic book that is my favorite Batman comic book. As you can tell from the title of this episode, I am going to explain to you why Batman number 156 is my favorite Batman comic book and why I like it so much that I have collected 3 copies of it. I think I've shown this on camera before. It is one of many comic books from the 60s that I consider to be one of my favorites, but this is my favorite Batman comic book. Now, before we get into that, I'll tell you that there are 2 stories in this comic book. Both were written by Batman co-creator Bill Finger. The interior artwork and the cover artwork is by Sheldon Moldoff, with inks by Charles Paris, who was a great inker. He was everywhere in the 40s and 50s. And Sheldon Moldoff, I actually met Sheldon Moldoff, and I don't remember if it was 77 or 78 at one of the early Chicago Comic-Cons, and he was there with Chester Gould, and Stan Lee was there. I tried to look up specifically which year that was online, because there used to be an online listing of all of the guests from all of the Comic-Cons, and I can't find it any longer. It used to be on what I call Wikicrappia, but it's Wikipedia, which does have a brief history of the Comic-Con. Joe Sarno in Chicago was involved in that. He was a cool guy. Anyways, I couldn't find that listing, so it was 77 or 78 I met Sheldon Moldoff, and it was really cool. I talked to him for a few minutes. I didn't have any money to buy a sketch. He was doing sketches for like $20, which in that period was expensive. And I wish to God that you can't go back in time and change it. I didn't have the money. But I met him. I don't have photos from then, any of that early days, and like I said, I can't find a listing for it on the internet. But anyway, Sheldon Moldoff, 77 or 78 in Chicago. I believe it was the Pick Congress Hotel. So for those of you that have a reference of that, you can tell me which year it was. Maybe he was there both years twice in a row. I don't know. Chester Gould was. I know that. Anyways, we all know when it comes to Batman comics that there are far better modern Batman comic books than this one. So I'll have to explain why I think it's my favorite. But we know that in the late 60s, all of you that are, you comic book guys know this as well as I do. The late 60s, DC had to change because Marvel had taken over in sales. What Stan Lee was doing and the other writers and the artists, it was really Stan Lee's scripting where he made you care about the characters because he put them in real situations that teenagers and young readers could relate to. And DC had to adapt. They had to change. So they had a writer, Denny O'Neil, and some other writers. And then for Batman, they had Neil Adams, Dick Giordano, and Irv Novick. Right? Great. From this point on, DC Comics becomes geared toward an older audience. And each year, each decade consecutively, it changes. Now, the factor for me in this, there's 2 factors why I consider this my favorite Batman comic compared to those later ones, which I love the ones, in the late 60s and in the 70s with Neil Adams and Dick Giordano and Irv Novick. My God, those were great comic books. But this is my favorite first and foremost for nostalgic reasons. It is one of the first Batman comic books that I had, so I treasure it for that. And number 2, and this is very important, the reason is because the world of imagination, these comic books were geared toward young readers. They are not geared toward young readers today. There's nothing being done with Batman. Well, there might be a young reader's version out there now. I think there is, but most of the Batman comics are not geared toward young readers. They are geared toward an adult audience that thinks that every issue that comes out is a collector's item. They're being sold, a bag of goods. Right or wrong, you decide for yourselves. The imagination is evident on the cover by Sheldon Moldoff, which was obviously taken from the script by Bill Finger. So Bill Finger created a story that was otherworldly. Bill Finger was an excellent writer. You don't hear anyone talk about him except to say he co-created Batman. Well, Bill Finger's the reason why there were so many imaginative elements in Batman, not Bob Kane. It was Bill Finger that did that with the scripts. So Sheldon Moldoff, who is ghosting for Bob Kane, he's not giving credit here until later. We know that he did this. This cover alone puts you in an alien world. Robin's dead, and you're wondering what the heck is going on. The interior artwork by Moldoff with Charles Pears doing the inks, based upon this script by Bill Finger, and I'll show you some panels here popping up. It's just incredible, the world of imagination. So what they had in these comic books for all of those years, those decades, was a sense of wonder, a sense of awe for younger readers. Their imaginations were fired up. And that's what you need if you're going to encourage people to be inspired. You need to get them inspired through the visuals, through the storytelling, so they can relate to it, so they can care about the characters. That is what this issue is all about. Take a look at the material being done today, and I'm sorry if I don't want to be too critical here, because there's enough of that in the world, but they're not. The difference is Batman comics today are not geared toward younger readers and audiences, and the sense of wonder is gone. They're dark, they're gloomy, and that's fine if you like them. Batman does need to be a dark and gloomy character, but there's no sense of wonder to it. There's no sense of excitement. There's no investment in the character in most of that, and that's primarily due to poor scripts, and the artwork and the coloring is ultra dark, which changes it. Now, a lot of you like that material. I understand. I respect that. I think it does have a value to it. I certainly would be shocked. I'm not going to live long enough to see what happens in 50 years, 60 years. Are you guys going to be looking back on this dark stuff that they're putting out and thinking that was so great? No, I think there are other things happening in the comic book industry where you will see that. But for me, it was a sense of wonder, the wild imagination of Bill Finger, which Sheldon Moldoff captures with his wild, cartoony panels, somewhat, basic primary coloring, going on with this, instead of the digital wash. There are good comic books on the market today, so don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I don't necessarily like Batman right now, but that's just me. I know a lot of you do. I think the market is glutted with Batman stuff. But this is my favorite for those reasons, because it's a sense of wonder, a sense of awe. It's like, wow, I'm invested in Batman. I want him to destroy evil like Doc Savage, And so those are all wonderful elements to have in storytelling in comic books. If you can get that sense of wonder, that, oh man, I can't believe it, for younger readers, you will create a generation of readers. You will create a generation of writers. You will create a generation of artists when those elements are present. And again, in all fairness, I think that there are comic books being done today where that is still evident. For example, in The Amazing Spider-Man, Zeb Wells was the writer on The Amazing Spider-Man recently, and he just stopped writing it. Zeb Wells was a great writer for Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man. Really good. So The Amazing Spider-Man is a title that I think still has that, because they're staying true to the character's origins. So with comic books, I'm looking for that. Even as an adult, I'm looking for a sense of wonder. I want to be awe-inspired by what I'm reading. I want to feel that emotional connection to the characters. So that's why Batman 156 is my favorite Batman comic book. And there are others. If you enjoy this type of thing, I'll do more of them. I do have some other comic books, some Green Lanterns and some Superman and a couple other Batmans that I'm going to do episodes on, why they're among my favorite comics. But I thought I'd start with Robin Dies at Dawn from June 1963, Batman, number 156, brought to life by the great Bill Finger and Sheldon Moldoff. My friends, until next time, stay happy, stay well, feed your brain, read a book.